This podcast is part of the Spoon Podcast Network, home of smart conversations that feed your mind.
Well, hello everybody once again, and welcome to Watch What You Eat with Carolyn O'Neil. I am Carolyn O'Neil, registered dietitian and food journalist. And on this podcast, we cover all the topics from pate to pesticides. Today we are going to be talking about pesticides. I don't know if we'll get to the pate, but in Watch What You Eat, we watch what's going on in the food world, the trends that are happening, what people are into, maybe what they're not into, and why. We tell you what to watch out for, to protect your body and your budget, your food budget, very important. And we like to watch, meaning we're food lovers. We just love to watch delicious foods come together and share recipes because, why even bother if it's not nutritious, even if it is delicious, it has to be delicious. So anyway, our guest today is Tamika Sims. And Tamika, I will describe her career as protecting people and the planet. We got to meet each other in California, even though we both live in Atlanta, Georgia. Tamika is with the International Food Information Council, shorthand IFIC, IFIC, and she'll tell us a little bit about that. And she's the Senior Director of Member and Partner Engagement, but more importantly, she has a PhD. And let me tell you a little bit about her background so you can get to know her. She's a native of Atlanta, Georgia. She received her bachelor's in biology from Spelman College. She has a master's in biomedical science from Georgia State University and a PhD in virology and immunology from the Morehouse School of Medicine. Incredible background, obviously connected. You're wondering, how does that all connect to food? Well, we're going to find out. And a little bit more about IFIC, I guess. It's a nonprofit for education and consumer research. And really, their mission is to communicate science-based information. That's what we're going to be getting into today about food safety, nutrition, and sustainable food systems. Because again, it's about people and the planet now, big time. And they have a vision for just helping a global environment where science information is so important it can really inform our food decisions. So Tamika, welcome to Watch What You Eat.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this.
Well, just to kind of kick it off, I'm excited too, by the way, because we had a great time in California. We were actually visiting farms and we learned a lot firsthand about things,
Yes.
about, we tend to romanticize the sort of farming world. It's not as easy as it looks, folks. Anybody who has tried to grow backyard tomatoes, right, and gone out in the morning and seen some insect bites in them, or maybe all of your basil gone because, a deer ate it, you have great empathy for what farmers are going through in the big picture.
Yeah.
But, let's talk about food safety first before we get to farming. Food safety, I think a lot of people associate with, well, first of all, food poisoning, foodborne illness, and that's still a thing, right?
Yes. Surprisingly, just the smallest thing that you may be doing in your kitchen can contribute to you or someone in your family having foodborne illness or food poisoning, as many people call it. So we often try to develop education resources on just safe food handling. How do you handle the food safely once you bring it into your house? So what do you need to do after you bring in your fresh produce? What do you need to do when you're getting ready to cook? And then cooking things to the correct temperature, and then also storing things that have been cooked or storing things that are shelf stable in a in the right environment. So we talk a lot about that too.
All right, so some foods are fresh. We're obviously not even cooking them, like salads, stuff like that. Some, like chicken, obviously we're going to be cooking to the proper temperature. Um, Tell me a little bit about, explain to us what cross-contamination means. We hear that all the time.
Yes, okay, that's a great place to start. So, as you mentioned, my background is in virology, which is the study of viruses. But I've also done a lot of studying on microbes of all kinds. So, not just viruses, bacteria, fungi. So, microbes in general are a lot of fun to learn about, but not a lot of fun if it's in your food and makes you sick. So, cross contamination can happen very easily. You think you're doing the most innocent thing in the kitchen, and you can actually introduce bacteria to your food unwittingly. So, what we often tell consumers or put in our education resources is that when you are cutting up your vegetables, you should not use the same cutting board, or at the same time cutting your vegetables and your meat, your raw meat, on the same cutting board or with the same utensils. So once you're getting ready to maybe flip the cutting board or reach for a new one, before or in between cutting up your meat and cutting up your fresh vegetables. Same thing for the knife you may use. Do not use the same knife to cut up your vegetables after cutting your meat. So that type of thing, you cannot be thinking too much about it. But even still, people may say, well, I'm going to prepare all these in the same pot. It's all going to, it's all the same thing. But you really should, the best practice is be mindful to separate the cutting utensils or the handling utensils of any kind before you switch from meat to vegetables. It's just best practice always.
It's interesting because I actually have, and I love these little plastic, kind of floppy cutting boards. Are all different colors.
Mhm.
And I think, oh, the red one, that's for the meat. The green one, that's for the
Yes.
vegetables. The blue one, that's for the cheese. Whatever. Just
Yes.
whatever works for you, folks,
Yes.
is important. And then when you think about, grilling season, well, by the way, year round is grilling season, right? And you think of people
Yeah.
marinating, whether it's beef or pork or chicken or whatever in that marinade.
Yeah.
What would you like to remind people not to do?
Yeah, so that's a good one too. You're right, and especially in Atlanta, we get a lot of warm days, so we can barbecue pretty much all year long. And we definitely do at my house, and I'm happy about that. So yeah, and marinating, separate, and chill. So when you want to marinate your meat, which a lot of times it's better to marinate your meat before you barbecue it, tastes better, and it makes it just be better all around, juicier, tastes better, everybody's happy. But do not marinate the meat with the vegetables. Separate and chill. So we always use this kind of a cutesy way to remember. It's clean, cook, separate, chill, the steps for safe food handling. And that is, you have to be mindful of that even when marination is involved. So marinating, it does not kill bacteria. So I think sometimes people think there's some kind of magic to marinating, like it kills bacteria. We absolutely would not say that you should rely on marinating to kill anything. What you should be doing is separating and making sure you're cooking your foods to the right temperature. That's another thing with grilling or cooking inside of the house. You want to use a thermometer. There's a food thermometer. I know a lot of people do not have meat thermometers, but we really encourage people to buy one. Um, Not a hefty lift here with price, so and it can keep you safe. So certainly, a meat thermometer is a
And
food
and
safety.
also chefs do it
Yeah.
not just for the food safety, but because then you're not overcooking,
Yes.
you're not undercooking, and you're
Yes.
keeping track of things rather than
Yes.
just sort of, oh, 3 minutes aside or whatever. You don't know how
Yeah.
hot the flames are. And back
Yes.
to that marinade, I know I was at a friend's house and they had marinated these steaks, and of course they were raw.
Mhm.
And then, put the steaks on the grill, and then, you can pour the marinade on top while you're grilling because you're still cooking, but don't be putting that into a gravy boat, and
Mhm.
serving it at the table like it's barbecue sauce.
Yeah.
That gets thrown away. Anything that's touched, as you said, the raw meat.
Yes.
What are the bad bugs? Everybody's heard of salmonella, but
Mhm.
then there are some lesser known, I don't know, cousins, if you will, bad cousins. Of course, E. coli.
E.
We hear a
coli,
lot about listeria.
listeria. Yes.
So, I know at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention when I was at CNN,
Mhm.
food safety was one of my beats, and so I was always at the CDC with the people who studied emerging
Mhm.
pathogens.
Mhm.
So, who are sort of the bad players, if you
Yeah.
will,
I mean,
in home food safety? Yeah.
you hit the high points with those guys. E. coli, salmonella, listeria can be lurking in many of the foods that we enjoy, especially fresh foods. And listeria is an issue again with frozen foods. And many people think that you can freeze the bugs to death. The bugs, the microbes, you cannot. You cannot. Do not do not rely on freezing in order to kill the bug. So you want to be sure, again, to be mindful, to pay attention to the instructions on the labels for cooking. Be very cautious in diverging away from what the instructions have told you to do. So we are very clear that it doesn't, of course, what the bacteria is does matter. However, the things that you put into play as far as keeping yourself safe should be the same. So, same rules for all the microbes.
All right, so I'm gonna go on the other side here, but there's no such thing as like perfectly sterile food either, right? You know what I mean? I mean, it's gonna be there. So I guess our goal is not to have them multiply. They talk about what the danger zone between 40 degrees Fahrenheit,
Yes.
like make sure your fridge is below that.
Yes.
And is it 140 and up on the other side? So in that little danger zone between 40 and 140, that's I guess when these microbes are super happy and are having a
Yeah.
party and multiply. So
Yes, they
keep
start.
them out of that zone.
Yes, you wanted that. Yes, the danger zone. So, since you mentioned barbecuing, that's a good thing. This time of year, people are cooking outside and they're having picnics and they're eating outside. So, another thing you need to be mindful of is that your food should be kept at a certain temperature. If you happen to pack it all up and you're outside and the temperatures are quite warm, as we're feeling here, it's almost 80 degrees today. You have to be mindful not to have your food sitting out for hours at a time because, again, yes, the bacteria can multiply. And then when you go to eat the food, it can make you sick. So using cold packs is often a really great thing. But even those things don't last for several hours to keep the temperature nice and cool for your cool foods. And even for hot foods should not stay out for more than 2 hours. And then you go to eat them, they should be packed up and get ready to be stored back in the refrigerator.
Okay, so I just had a vision here of Tamika at the family picnic or with friends. They're like, "Uh-oh, here she comes. Here she comes." And you're like, food safety cop.
Yes.
I mean, I find myself doing that too. You go to like a potluck and I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. I don't know how they prepared that."
I'm like, how long has this been sitting out? Should I be worried? You might need to be worried. I mean, and ask. There's no harm in asking. How long has
Okay.
this been sitting out? How
Hey, and
long?
another fun thing is, how mayonnaise has always like gotten the bad rap, the culprit. And I was reading some research that showed that mayonnaise actually is pretty high in acid,
Mhm.
and it sometimes can retard food spoilage.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
Yeah. It's not the mayo. It's not the mayo. Don't blame the mayo.
it's not the mayo.
No,
If the butler did not do it, the mayo did not do
the
that.
mayo did not do it.
Well, let's move on to an area that again is something we don't really have as much control over in our shopping carts or in our our personal kitchens, pesticide management. And
Yeah.
it's crop protection is really the term used today.
Mhm.
Um they're necessary in many, many ways, and even organically
Yeah.
grown foods. There
Yes.
are a long list, pretty long list of accepted crop protection or pesticides that are allowed to be used even within organic farming.
Yeah.
How do you explain to people as they, roll their carts into the produce section? It's not like
Mhm.
the organic is perfectly angelic over there and everything else is riddled with pesticides. Where are we today? How do you like to explain this to people?
I love that. And I'm glad you brought it up because it does come up quite often. And it's a common misconception that organic means pesticide free. And somehow the conventional vegetable or produce, fruit or vegetable, is somehow worse for you or not as nutritious, even. Some people think that it's not as good for you. So, both conventional and organic use pesticides in order to maintain the integrity of the crops, meaning that the pesticide is there to only harm the pest and it's used in a modest amount only to help the farmer um, protect the productivity of the farm. It's not used in excessive amounts. There's no dousing of chemicals on either type of crop, conventional or organic. It's a modest use, and there are regulations that are put into place for how much can be used over how much time and in what areas, and it's ongoing. It's been that way for decades, decades and decades. And so, what we would like to say is that people are not consuming enough fruits and vegetables. Carolyn, every time the dietary guidelines for Americans come out, one of the main points the committee has made is that people are not consuming enough fruits and vegetables. So we certainly wouldn't want people to think that organic is better for them and conventional is not so great for some reason, and they turn away from the conventional. When if you live in a certain place, the conventional may be all that's available to you, or it may fit better into your budget, and so you should go for it. You should feel confident and secure in knowing you should go for it. Now if you're somewhere and you're like, you know what, this these organic apples are looking a little shinier to me today, I'd rather have this organic apple, and if your pocketbook likes it, go for it. So we really want to be sure that people understand that there's a safety, there's safety protocols and guidelines and measures that are taken for both types of crops, and there's nothing that says that one is superior to the other.
All right. So one of the terms that people hear is pesticide residue. Like it's residue and I'm going to wash it off. And then of course every year we have the dirty
Yeah,
dozen that comes out from the environmental working group.
yeah,
And they list, what they call dirty, and I kind of call it the not so dirty dozen because even though they found residue,
yeah,
it's far below, right? It's far below what is, except, it would be a tolerance level that we needed to worry about, far below. So explain about how pesticide residues are measured, who's doing it, and,
mhm,
and, and what should we know?
yeah,
One
yeah.
411.
Yeah, sure, sure, sure. So yeah, so there's pesticide residue possibility is it does happen with any type of crop once it's actually in the store. Residue levels and monitoring and level setting and regulations are basically the efforts going behind that are it's a concerted effort between the FDA, the USDA, and the EPA. So it's not one government body doing all the work and the other two don't know what's happening. They're all working together. So, and I will say this every year, the USDA does a residue testing on a large group of commodities. They look to see how much residue is actually detectable. And over 99% year after year of these commodities come up below the residue limit. And the limit is also set very, very well in that even if something was over the limit, you would have to consume an exorbitant amount of that one commodity if for it to have any adverse health effects. So there's a pesticide residue calculator, and if you go in there and you just type in how many strawberries would I need to eat, you would have to consume over 1,000 strawberries in one day in order to come even close to the residue limit that's been set for consumption or exposure, I should say.
Yeah, the exposure. And it's interesting because we know in farming today, modern agriculture in the United States specifically, we're talking about, has come a long way.
Yeah.
And, places that do the research, one of the places that we visited when we were in California with the Alliance for Safe Food and Farming, we
Mhm.
got to go to San Luis Obispo, beautiful. We were staying in Santa Barbara
Yeah.
and then sort of had a day trip. A school tour, if you will, to Cal Poly to their strawberry center.
Yeah.
You just mentioned strawberries.
Yeah.
And I think that what really was amazing to me, we saw fields and fields of strawberries. Of course, they were gorgeous. You could
Yeah.
smell them. You
Yeah.
see them being harvested
Yeah.
and the care that's being taken there. And then when we went to the research center, the strawberry center at Cal Poly, remember when the one student was looking in the camera and it was almost like an electron microscope, was super, super tiny on the you saw, oh my gosh, you gotta be kidding me. There was like a zillion little bugs,
Yeah.
right? Teeny weeny, like not seen with the naked eye,
Yeah.
little bugs
Yeah.
that I'm probably consumed. You'd chew them up, there'd probably be a little bit of protein, whatever, but not healthy for the plant
Yeah.
because it said it attacked the leaves, which of course are so important for them, for the health of the plant.
Mhm.
And that's when I realized, boy, this is a race
Yeah.
against nature.
Yeah. Yeah.
How can we use a little bit of something to really prevent a huge crop failure?
Yes, yes. I mean, I when we saw all those things in California, especially with the strawberry fields and talking to the farmers, I thought it was amazing all the work that goes into it, and that's coming from for you and I, who are actually very in tune with the food system and food system stakeholders, we still are able to be amazed in all the care and love and attention. I mean, these are people that this type of work is grueling and it's continuous. You have to really enjoy what you're doing here. So I'm going to use the word love.
Yeah.
All the care and love that's and attention that's put into this, and it is a race. Who gets the first bite? You are the bug. You have to be really ready with many different tools in order to get to that place where you are winning the fight.
Okay, kind of a chemical tool. People, oh, chemical. But I was just reading on their website today that there is a research study. One of the students has come up with an idea for using citrus oils. And you know how citrus actually is antimicrobial, especially the oils in there. So it's neat to see what they're experimenting with, how nature can help nature, right?
Mhm.
Citrus oils helping. And then when we were there and we saw a bug vac, another invention by one of the students at Cal Poly,
Yeah.
San Luis Obispo, and we went out to the strawberry farm, remember?
Yeah.
And it was like driving a tractor, essentially vacuums up the teeny weeny little bugs.
Yeah. It was amazing. It was amazing. I was like, "Oh my gosh." So the way that it was able to maneuver in between the rows of the crop and then be have one person sitting on top navigating the whole thing and sucking everything up. Amazing. Amazing. Without damaging the plant. So it has to be gentle enough to not damage the plant, but strong enough to suck up the pests.
And so some folks might think, and I guess we all had the same thought at that moment, wow, this would be great to use on every crop, but every crop is different. It was designed just for that kind of a row. Then we visited a farmer who was growing bell peppers,
Yeah.
green bell peppers and red or whatever. And we said, hey, could you use a bug vac? And he's like, no, our bugs are too big.
Yeah.
It wouldn't work.
Right.
So it just really called to mind again the complications of crop protection
Yeah.
based on what you're growing,
Yeah.
where you're growing it. Like tomatoes, in a place where there's lots of bugs, obviously you're going to have that, right? And then potatoes grown in arid regions don't
Mhm.
have as many insects, but you grow a potato in Georgia, there's going to be a lot of bugs. So
Yeah.
that really, really caught my attention how specific it was for crop and for region and regulation.
Yes, yes. There's so much balance that has to come with productivity for growing crops, but then also making sure that as the food moves down the food supply chain and eventually reaches the consumer, that it's beautiful, it's delicious like you said, and then also safe. I think what struck me too is that how we get so many strawberries all the way from California, and they reach us and they're beautiful. That takes a lot of work. It's not a no small feat to make sure that this one little strawberry or carton of strawberries reaches you and it's beautiful and delicious and ready to be eaten.
Yeah, and again, as you said, by avoiding them, and then you're missing out,
You're
not just on
missing
the taste,
out.
but all that nutrition.
Yeah.
And of course, let's a little shout out to the folks who are growing strawberries in Florida too, and other places, but
Yes, in
still,
Florida too.
But it is probably one of the best loved things in the supermarket in people's homes. What other emerging issues, let's say in agriculture, impact food safety? We think about. I know you've worked a lot in the water world, water quality. So many things at play here.
Yeah, I think another thing that comes to mind for even my work at IFIC and my previous work at CropLife America and previous work at the International Bottled Water Association is natural resource use and making sure that you're using as little as possible, but still maintaining a high quality product over and over and over again. So I think that also there's a lot of misconceptions about the use of natural resources by the food industry or food system stakeholders in a irresponsible way. And it's so far from the truth. Really, every input that goes into in farming or in food production or in beverage production, there's a high goals here not to waste a single drop, not to waste a single drop of water. Certainly, any farmer in California will tell you how precious water is. Any farmer around the country will tell you how precious water is. Climate change is a real thing. And so weather patterns are not as predictable as they used to be. And so a lot of times when you're expecting rain or needing rain, you may not get the rain. So farmers are looking for more ways to conserve water. There's also a lot of scientific work going into developing crops that don't need as much water. Drought tolerance is a beautiful thing. I commend every scientist working on drought tolerant crops because water usage and water availability is just not what it used to be 100 years ago.
Again, back to our little strawberries, I remember they shared with us that each of the strawberry plants in the field, and of course, it's drip irrigation, so it
Mhm.
can be finely controlled, even with their cell phones, even
Yes.
with AI, whatever,
Yes.
they've got there's an app for that. But I remember it was 8 ounces of water a day because, a strawberry is a pretty watery product, right?
Mhm, mhm, mhm,
Whereas let's say you're growing peas or lentils, they're kind of known, right, for not needing that much water.
mhm.
And so again, it really is crop dependent. Now,
Yeah.
I know at IFIC, again, folks, that's the International Food Information Council, a nonprofit
Yes.
dedicated to educating all of us on consumer food issues. Certainly go to their website, ific.org. A lot of the things that Tamika is talking about, lots of fun things to read there and learn about. But you do surveys. So what did you find out? There was a recent survey. And again, people will be listening to this podcast now, and then maybe even later in the year, you'll have more surveys.
Yeah.
But what are you finding out what people are really concerned about being healthy through their food?
Yeah, that's really great. So, as I work in the agriculture and food safety realm, the IFIC team has a nice variety of registered dietitians that are on the team as well. And so we talk about food safety issues, but we also talk about nutrition and dietary guidance. And people are looking for, well, I'll say this, I'll back up a little bit. Every year we do a really large survey called the Food and Health Survey. 2025 will actually mark the 20th year of the Food and Health Survey, where we have been collecting consumer insights and perceptions about everything about food, how food is made, what's healthy, what's not, labels that people are looking for, or indicators that something should be purchased, or maybe I don't want to purchase that, all the things. And so we use that in order to figure out what we need to develop as far as educational resources and or communicator resources. What do we need to help the communicators, the people that are reaching people? So registered dietitians, academics, journalists, and so on. And so, in our most recent survey, we have seen that people are looking for what's healthy, but people are still wanting things to be convenient. So that may not be surprising. Um, the way of our society, the way of the world, is for everything to be pretty fast, and so we live pretty fast paced lives. However, we are health conscious. We're a health conscious society. We also want the foods that we eat to give us maybe a leg up on health, like immune system support. That's a thing. So we know certainly post pandemic that people are looking to feel better and they want their food to help them along the way.
Well, since we have you here, and I couldn't help but, of course, remind myself about your PhD in immunology. Can what we eat really affect our immune system?
Oh, yes. So there's a lot of work that's going on that people are, not us, but researchers are working on about fruits and vegetables that can help your gut microbiome and your gut microbiome, therefore helping your immune system. So there's some really great resources on our website about microbiome. We have even some webinars on that as well, where if you have some outside experts come to talk to us about that as well. But yes, going back to strawberries, simple vitamins that we are used to hearing about, vitamin C. Strawberries are full of vitamin C. There are many other foods that are full of vitamin C too, right? So
Yeah.
that type of thing is also very, it's important to know that that nutrient availability is there in the simplest way. the simplest way. The foods that you're used to seeing over and over again. Everybody's heard an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Now, that may not be like all the way true, but there's something there, right? An apple is just like readily available, good for you, filling, lots of fiber. I mean, all the things that are helping your body be its best and make a good nutritious choice.
So that fiber actually is a prebiotic, which is to kind of, circle the wagons here.
Yeah, I like that.
There's bad microbes, but there's good microbes, right? So it's the good microbes in our gut health,
Yes.
I guess, that we want to feed them, make them happy
Yes.
so that they can, fight out the bad guys too. A little kind of like give them something to work with. Eat your fruits and vegetables, beans, peas, legumes, whatever,
Yes.
and feed the good microbes.
The good microbes, they're all in your body, all in your tummy. And so that I mentioned gut microbiome, but yeah, that's exactly what it is. You're trying to feed the good bacteria that are in your gut, and they help keep your immune system strong.
How about that? The way to a man's heart is through his stomach. The way to everybody's heart is through their stomach,
Oh yeah,
apparently.
big
And
time.
that's what's keeping us as healthy. Well, I've so enjoyed this. I want to have you back, Tamika, because you mentioned it about the big anniversary of the survey for IFIC. So we'll have you back when that's out and talk about what we found out,
Yeah.
taking a pulse of what's happening in America. You're right. The three things don't seem to change. People want things that taste good. They'd love for it to be healthy, and they certainly desire convenience so they can make it happen. You know
Yes.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Anything too complicated, unless, of course, it's, making homemade pasta. I'm willing to go the extra mile to do that every once in a while. Well, Tamika Sims, it has been a pleasure to have you on Watch What You Eat. Really enjoyed it. And again, folks, all this information and so much more you can find on IFIX, IF as in Frank, IC as in Carolyn.org, but International Food Information Council. Thanks so much. We're going to have you back. And I just wanted to say, everybody, thanks for listening. And you're invited, of course, to add Watch What You Eat with Carolyn O'Neil to your podcast menu.